Chad According to Chad, Part 3. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Left Undone. I'm Catherine. With Chad's murder trial coming up on April 1st, we're back at it, hopefully leading to more justice for the September 2019 murders of 7-year-old JJ Vallow and 16-year-old Tylee Ryan. Both were found buried in Chad Daybell's backyard, and more justice for the October 2019 death of Chad's wife, 49-year-old Tammy Douglas Daybell. This is part 3 of Chad According to Chad. If you're tuning in for the first time to the series and don't know a lot about Chad Daybell, I'll link parts 1 and 2 down below. In parts 1 and 2, we read excerpts from Chad's own writing, and here's what we have been able to learn about him so far. Chad had a pretty typical childhood in Utah. He wanted to be a superior athlete, but he wasn't. And he spent the next 40 years convincing himself that he was okay with that. He claims he started to get guidance from a voice from heaven when he was in middle school. The voice quickly went from good messages, like telling him not to kill bees, to supporting whatever Chad wanted, even if it was selfish, unfair, and eventually immoral. Suddenly, at age 45, Chad started talking about his own near-death experiences, one at age 17 and another at age 25, claiming they had made him become a visionary and a prophet. Only problem was he never told his family, friends, or teachers about them before. And those near-death experiences borrowed heavily from the JK Rowling Harry Potter series and a few other obvious sources. So let's resume our journey and see if we can figure out where it all went so wrong for Chad Guy Daybell. What can we expect to see from him in his upcoming murder trial? The prosecution's theory about his alleged co-conspirator, Lori Vallow Daybell, and Chad, was that their motive for the murders of JJ Vallow and Tylee Ryan and Tammy Daybell was simple: money, power, and sex. Now, Chad, for the first 15 years of his marriage, played the part of a humble Mormon husband and father very well. Nothing suggested that beneath the surface he was lusting for money, power, and sex. He seemed devoted to a simple life of writing and going to church with his wife and his children. But at some point, this all changed. And like a bad actor who couldn't stay in character, it became more difficult for him to hide that he wanted all three of those things. We're going to watch Chad go from an entitled, narrowly focused, awkward teenager to a dangerous liar, a cheat, a con man, and possibly a murderer. We'll explore more of that in this episode. Stay tuned. There's still so much more to talk about, so let's get into it. Hi, for those of you who have been here before, welcome back. For those of you who are new, my name is Catherine. I'm a mom of 4 grown kids, a hospice nurse, and I am a travel vlogger, and I love to travel, and I am a YouTube true crime content creator, apparently. That's why we're here. Yeah. So anyway, over 4 years ago, I did start this YouTube channel, Left Undone, Incomplete Investigations. It was one of the first channels that covered the story of the 2 missing children from Idaho, 7-year-old JJ Vallow and 16-year-old Tylee Ryan. Now, back in January of 2020, we all hoped the children would be found alive. But we have a whole nother story. By the way, if you would like to please stick around, get notifications when we come live again, or when we drop content like this, please like, subscribe, and ring the bell if you're new. Also, just FYI, my other YouTube channel is called Beyond the Empty Nest. Catherine J. Brooks, Beyond the Empty Nest, did his travel vlog. Mostly, I have traveled to Greece over the last couple of years. So if you're interested in seeing that part of my life and travel, go check me out over there, and I would love for you to subscribe. Also, Afterglow, Unveiling the Idaho Cult is my podcast, and that deeply dives into this whole case, Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell. So if you want to listen to podcasts, it's available on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and here on YouTube. Okay, back to what we're here for. Last time we left off with Chad sharing a vision of himself as an older man having the wonderful opportunity to build the New Jerusalem and how he appeared to be in great shape, super buff. So let's stop and think about that for a minute. If someone asked you to close your eyes and imagine that the whole world was destroyed and you've been part of building a new, perfect society, and you're living out your golden years in this new society, the New Jerusalem, and that you imagine you've created in your head, is anything even slightly focused on how toned your body looks? Chad is so freaking bizarre, I am telling you. Maybe it's just Chad's attempt at a little joke, but it's such a shallow, awkward, immature humor. The kind of self-consciousness, self-focus you see in young teenage boys. Emotionally, and to a certain extent intellectually, Chad just seems to be stuck in a teenage brain, in a teenage boy mind. The dorky, misfit adolescent vibe lurks in the background of all of his writing. Like most of us, Chad Daybell wanted to be popular and well accepted by his peers as a teen, but you get the sense from his writing that he really struggled socially in his teen years. Chad's autobiography, Living on the Edge of Heaven, gives us a glimpse into a lot of loneliness. Chad writes that he walks to middle school alone because his old elementary school friends changed their route and they didn't include him. He's in shop class, a class where he has little natural talent, and another kid in that class starts punching him every day, according to Chad, for literally no reason. He says his best friends in high school were his cousin and a paraplegic neighbor in his 80s. Chad was paid $1 a day to take this older man out of bed in the morning and put him back at night. Okay, I just need to say, I wonder if he got bed sores, because if he just went and took him out, put him in a wheelchair and brought him back 12 hours later or 10 hours later, that dude needs to be turned and moved every 2 hours. I can only imagine, because, okay, that was just way off topic, but as a nurse, you don't just take somebody out of bed. This is way off topic, sorry, but this is my wheelhouse. You don't just take somebody out of bed, put him in a wheelchair for 10 hours and put him back in bed. The dude probably had an open coccyx wound, a tailbone wound, bed sore, stage 2, 3, 4. Oh my gosh. Okay. Sorry. Seems weird. Where were the people in between in the day? So Chad spins his friendship with this 80-year-old into sort of a Tuesdays with Maury story, with himself as a bit of a hero, and even gets third place in a Utah high school technical writing contest with an essay called How to Put an Old Man to Bed. For someone who wants to be big man on campus, it's a very small friend group that he has. While there's nothing wrong with someone having a small friend group in high school, that's what was best for a lot of kids. But that wasn't what Chad wanted. There's probably good reasons why Chad Daybell was lonely. Here's anecdotes Chad writes about himself. Chad and his father performed a skit together at Springville High, and what was supposed to be a comic stage slap ended up with Chad slapping his father with such force that the students and the audience gasped. It's not a huge leap to think other students found that disturbing. A 6'2" teenage boy hitting his father hard in the face isn't cool. It's not even funny, but Chad thought it was. And even in his 40s, when he was writing up his memoir, he included that story proudly. Sounds about like Chad. Chad's all about Chad. Chad according to Chad. I'm going to share a very compelling photo that was in the 1986 Springville High yearbook. It's publicly accessible, but we're not going to name any of the other people in the photo. It's important to let you see their faces, though. That's Chad at top. Let's look at this photo. The faces, the body language, the other 5 kids are fully engaged in the moment, not only with each other, but with the photographer. There's a lot of life in those young faces. Their eyes are bright, their body language is warm and happy, but look at Chad. He's oddly disconnected from the other 5. His mouth is tight with a forced grin, almost a grimace. He's looking away from the photographer, distracted in his own world. Definitely, Chad is not in the moment. He's not in that same moment that those other kids are sharing. He's not part of that group. There's another photo, a professional one, that Chad shares in his autobiography of the same group. He's a little better integrated in that shot, but this candid shot is far less staged and far more realistic, and a far more realistic moment captured in time. This seems more in line with Chad, who we see right now in the news. Socially awkward, disconnected from what's going on around him in his own world. After high school, Chad goes to BYU. And once again, there's a sense that Chad is isolated and unpopular. He writes that he spent most of his time on the BYU campus in the library. His excuse was he was on a multi-year scholarship. According to the BYU website, students have to keep their GPA at or above 3.6 to keep the scholarship. 3.6, that's a B plus. Why is such a brilliant guy struggling to keep a B plus average? Here comes the excuses. And we know Chad is the man of excuses. He's bombing freshman math. He blames it on the cliff jump. Somehow, my accident had made me, gotta use my voice, sorry. Somehow, my accident had made me even dumber in math. It was as if any knowledge I had beyond basic multiplication tables had been erased. That's Chad explaining why it's not his fault. So if you're keeping track of the excuses and blame, Chad hasn't made friends at BYU, and whose fault is it? It's either the scholarship's fault, since it makes him have to spend all his time in the library, or it's math's fault for being so hard, or the cliff jump's fault for erasing anything beyond multiplication tables he learned at what, age 10? In this upcoming trial, will the cliff jump be to blame for Chad's actions? Speaking of the cliff jump, here's something else to consider about his first year at BYU. In his first year, Chad took a whole BYU course about Pearl of Great Price. Pearl of Great Price is a collection of LDS writings that include a lot of accounts of visions, visitations, transfigurations. It was taught by an author named Rodney Turner, who wrote This Eternal Earth, a scriptural and prophetic biography. So definitely an LDS prophecy and visions guy. Chad talked with his professor frequently after class and asked him many questions. Chad writes in 2017, I regret not telling him about my cliff jumping experience because I'm sure he would have appreciated it. First of all, this guy, what a freaking ego. How appreciative he would have been of me, Chad Daybell. Second, another indication that Chad is full of baloney, extra cheese. We're supposed to believe he just blows off another opportunity to ask an expert about the prophecies and visions he's been experiencing for over a year? Particularly unbelievable since the cliff jump erased his ability to do math and he's losing his scholarship. But no, he claims he kept it all to himself. How can this cliff jump be anything other than a big, fat lie. And just saying, on the topic of Chad's college life, sad truth, a college library is such a common place to go on days when there are no friends to hang out with. It's not a big deal. It's just what happens until you make friends or meet someone special. But it sounds like Chad wasn't having much luck with the ladies either that year. One girl told him, "Chad, there's more to life than the Utah Valley, you know?" Chad was offended and didn't listen to her, as we'll see later when he began his career in journalism. That's Chad. I think we can assume from all of this that Chad's first year at BYU was not very good. It was not great at all. He writes that by January, he was walking across a snowy campus thinking, "There isn't a soul on earth who cares about what I'm doing right now." To deal with that loneliness, he hung out in the BYU library with the friendly spirits and dark souls that apparently, according to Chad, are all zipping around the Harold B. Lee Library constantly. That sounds familiar. I guess we can all assume that Chad saw Ghostbusters too. Ever heard of joining a club, Chad? Or going to the gym, Chad? Oh, wait, I forgot. You don't care about sports. Never mind. So, like many freshmen, Chad discovered that university was a lot harder than high school. It was demanding. And as we've learned, when the going gets rough, the Chad gets going right out the door. So that February at age 18, Chad had a strong prompting. Think the voice.
The voice, the voice, the voice.
To quit BYU and go on an LDS mission. The problem was, though, there were rules back in 1987. You had to be 19. He was too young. But did that stop Chad? Nope. Here's an early example of Chad believing since he's so special, he can bend the LDS rules. Let me share. This is from Living on the Edge of Heaven. I was receiving strong promptings that February to submit my mission papers early. The standard practice at the time was to wait until 3 months before your 19th birthday to start working on them, which would have been mid-May for me. That felt way too late, so Dad and I talked to our bishop about it. The bishop was very reluctant to even consider it, saying he'd never seen anyone leave early, but he agreed to give it a try. We took care of all the interviews and medical requirements, including removing 4 of my wisdom teeth. By the way, that's how many wisdom teeth people have. There's 4. Unless Chad has more, I don't know. And we sent the papers to church headquarters in March. The bishop was pretty blunt with me that he felt this had been an unnecessary rush. He expected my papers to be returned and that he'd have to resend them at a later time. I just kept quiet because I knew it had been the right thing to do. BYU semester ended and I started working for the Parks Department again while I waited for my mission call. I came home for lunch one day in early May, and Mom met me at the door. She was acting frantic. "What's going on?" I asked. She shoved a big white envelope into my hand. "It's your mission call. Call your dad at work. Do you know how hard it has been for me to wait?" Mom was doing a nervous little dance around the kitchen as I got Dad on the phone. Then I tore open the envelope and read, "You are assigned to labor in the New Jersey Morristown mission. You should report to the Missionary Training Center in Provo, Utah on Wednesday, July 15th, 1987. You will learn the discussions in Spanish." Mom let out a scream, and I couldn't quite believe it because I'd never thought of New Jersey as a possible destination. I knew it was one of the 13 original colonies, but that was it. Then Mom looked at the reporting date again. "July 15th, that's only 2 months away. We need to get busy. This anecdote is particularly interesting because it sounds like the bishop was not in favor of this, was not in favor of Chad applying early. Chad's version downplays that, but you can't help but wonder what the bishop was actually thinking. Was it about the age rules or was it about Chad himself? There's another instance a few years earlier of Chad feeling the usual LDS rules should not apply to him. In 1982, Chad got his patriarchal blessing from a bishop at age 14, not at the age of 16 like everybody else. Why? Because he told his parents and his bishop that he had a strong feeling he should, and the adults facilitated it. So, two very early examples of Chad's attitude. He wants to look like he's more spiritually advanced than others. And if the common rules don't support what he wants, he just bends them. Did every time Chad get away with something like this cement in his mind that just by saying, "Oh, I have a deep spiritual prompting," or "I feel the Lord wants this," he'd get his way? This method does get Chad to the head of the line, whatever that line is. The age you get a blessing sure shouldn't be a race, but it feels like it was to Chad Daybell. You know, look at me, I'm further ahead than you are on the spiritual journey. And probably why I'm making up stories about visions and stuff later on. It worked, right? Fast forward to 2019 for a second. At that time of these murders, Chad was allegedly telling Lori that as exalted beings, they don't have the same rules as other Mormons. They don't have to repent or wear sacred garments or observe LDS temple rules or respect their marriage vows. Did this all stem from Chad's "I'm a special Mormon boy" attitude? Sure makes you wonder, right? As far as the proficient liar that Chad became, we'll talk about that next time. So many examples of Chad's lies in his books and Lori's recent trial. A lot of Chad's words will make you wonder if he's lying. Is he lying? Or is he joking? Or is he just mistaken? Or is he exaggerating? You just don't know with him. But it's a technique he uses a lot. And as far as the reason Chad gave for wanting an early priesthood blessing at age 14 instead of waiting until he was 16, a great example of a weird, super stupid Chad story. Chad says the reason he wanted an early blessing at age 14 was because he was obsessed, get this, with the Billy Joel song, "Only the Good Die Young," because he considered himself to be such a good kid. He became afraid he was going to die young. First of all, this guy, I mean, really, he thinks, "I'm so special, such a good boy, I'm going to die young." 120 dead bees beg to differ. Chad. Second of all, for those of us who actually know this song from 1977, "Only the Good Die Young," only the good die young, do, Billy Joel. It's not really a song about dying young at all. It's a song about a young guy who wants to get laid. Seriously. I mean, maybe Chad got that part. I don't know. Doubtful. But anyway, he likes a nice Catholic girl, and to convince her to do the deed, he tells her, with horny teenage logic, that she shouldn't be such a good girl because only the good die young. Now, why did you want this early blessing, Chad? It wouldn't have anything to do with your little Chad, would it? Sorry. I had to go there. I'm sorry. Okay. His little Chad. Can't be that impressive. Anyhow, back to Chad's mission. Chad, helped by his father, successfully gets around the bishop and around the age rules, and Chad receives his mission papers. Destination: Morristown, New Jersey. This kind of cracks me up because it reminds me of the Broadway play, The Book of Mormon, which I thought was hilarious. I loved it. And kind of reminds me of that, right? He spends the summer of 1987 learning Spanish at the Missionary Training Center in Provo. And apparently, Chad, in addition to not being good at math, is also terrible at Spanish. Now, if you're keeping track, the leader of the 144,000, the guy who's been the Holy Ghost 3 times, an archangel, an apostle, the guy who's going to be building the New Jerusalem and leading the LDS church, isn't mechanically inclined, can't do math, and is terrible at languages. Womp womp. So there you have it. Wrap that all up in a package, plus add in a lazy attitude, a desire to discuss non-approved LDS topics, and before he leaves for New Jersey, a non-LDS approved haircut styled like Drago. Oh, by the way, it was the hairdresser's fault, not Chad's, of course. Nothing's his fault. So with all this going on for him, Chad left the Utah Valley to fly to Morristown, New Jersey for a primarily Puerto Rican neighborhood to be a missionary for 2 years. And surprisingly, one of the fellow missionaries was interviewed and said he was really great. People were drawn to him. If you ever want to read an account of what Chad's mission was like, Chad wrote a book called Doug's Dilemma, and it's free to read with Amazon Unlimited, if you're interested. Even though Doug's Dilemma really doesn't have anything to do with Chad's upcoming trial, it's worth sharing a few highlights. Chad renames himself Doug Dalton. And in addition to being the greatest missionary ever, he makes himself a handsome sports hero. If you watched episodes 1 and 2, you know why that is super funny. Chad, wannabe sports hero. Couldn't quite cut it. Wrong year, too many problems, too many good athletes that year. That's all it was for. So lots of sports, as usual. In the book, young children run up to Doug, and because of his fabulous physique, asks, "Do you play for the Mets?" In the book, he has a contest with a Mets baseball player as to who could throw the fastest fastball. Of course, Doug, wins. Naturally, all the young Mormon girls throw themselves at Doug constantly. Best of all, Chad nicknames Doug the famous Double D Doug Dalton. Double D. Chad says it has to do with Doug's baseball skills. The book combines Chad's real-life missionary experiences with stories he borrows from his grandpa Keith's life. It has all the trademark Daybell, stupid fight scenes, some gore, some time travel where he fights in World War II alongside his grandpa Keith, and a lot of clumsy uses of the terms Spanish and Spanish speaking to describe Hispanic and Latino culture in New Jersey. Not an easy read, people, but if you're in the mood for a convoluted, bizarre tale, it's there for you. All right, that wraps up this part 3. Please like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Rest in peace, JJ, Tylee, and Tammy. May their memories be eternal, as we say in the Greek Orthodox Church. And to all of you, stay safe, stay well, and we'll be back soon. Bye-bye.